On an ordinary night, under the intermittent glow of the iconic red and yellow sign, an untold story hides. In the shadows of this familiar McDonald's, something sinister lurks silently, transforming smiles into screams and happiness into horror. As the world sleeps, the golden arches keep dark secrets. Here, in the depths of the night, echoes of joyful laughter turn into disturbing whispers and distorted chuckles. What happens when the lights go out and people leave? What lies behind the friendly smile of the clown and the children's games? Tonight, I invite you to dive into the unknown, to explore the dark side of a place we all know. If you're ready to uncover the mysteries hiding in the shadows of McDonald's, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. Your curiosity will be rewarded with more spine-chilling stories. Join us on this frightening journey and hit the bell to not miss any moment of terror. Now, let's unravel the secrets waiting in the darkness together. I worked at my local McDonald's for an approximate period of 4 months, an experience that didn't last. I prefer to believe that there are better opportunities for me beyond the fast food sector. Furthermore, what I experienced there didn't encourage me to stay. This was undoubtedly the most terrifying experience I've ever faced. In an effort to impress and advance quickly, I informed the managers of my availability to take on any necessary shifts, filling in for those who were absent. Financial need motivated me. The more hours I worked, the better. One evening, around 8 p.m., just before going to sleep, I received a call from the restaurant. An employee from the night shift had called in sick. Despite fatigue and irritation, I reluctantly agreed to cover the shift and began to prepare. I had never worked at night before, neither at that McDonald's nor in previous jobs. There was a certain excitement on my part because at night, the customer flow is reduced by half, and the manager on duty was John, known for his relaxed demeanor. It seemed like an easy opportunity to make money. When I arrived at 8:30 p.m., the place was crowded. I clocked in and started attending to the flood of customers. Around 10:30 p.m., the customer flow decreased and the establishment emptied out. The leader from the previous shift wished me luck, even though it was my first night shift. Then it was just me and John. He was occupied with administrative tasks while I managed the drive-thru, the counter, and the kitchen. I felt anxious, worried about the possibility of not being able to handle the intense traffic. At that McDonald's, the headsets beep every time a car enters the drive-thru, emitting a pixelated bell sound that quickly becomes irritating. It was this sound that I suddenly heard. I promptly greeted the customer with forced enthusiasm. I wasn't sure if a magnet or a sensor detected vehicles, but the microphone was ready to capture orders. However, all I heard was static noise. No one responded or spoke. I couldn't even hear the sound of an engine. It was as if there was no one there. This had happened before, as the system could be triggered by movements around the building. After 3 minutes of static, the microphone turned off, indicating that the wait had been removed. However, in less than a minute, it activated again, with the bell ringing loudly. Irritated, I repeated the greeting, but again, there was no response. This time, the microphone remained on for a longer time, and I even heard heavy breathing, which made me uneasy. I thought someone was playing a tasteless prank. The static persisted for about 10 minutes before turning off. I considered passing the headset to John, but decided to tough it out. I tried to distract myself by cleaning already clean counters and checking the lobby stock. The darkness outside the lobby's windows had a sinister look. When the bell rang again, I nearly lost my composure. I should have lowered the volume of the device. Before I could greet the customer, a terrifying scream echoed. Startled, I threw the headset away and recoiled. Confused and terrified, I put the headset back on and ran outside toward the drive-thru. Next to the menu, I found no one, but the headset static continued. The microphone was still active. Then I heard a whispering voice saying, "Oh, I see you." I ran back inside as fast as I could. I had been right next to the microphone, but there was no one there. No one could have made that sound. I returned to the warmth and safety of the establishment, where I found John, absorbed in scheduling shifts. When I asked him about the noise, he denied any involvement, making me feel guilty for suspecting him. I returned to the counter, waiting for the shift to end. It was around 1:30 a.m. The night was dragging on slowly. I stayed in the drive-thru, distracting myself with my phone. With only 2 customers in the last hour, the slowness was even more evident. While playing and browsing Facebook, I felt a cold breeze on my arm. The drive-thru window was slightly open. I ignored it and continued with my phone until a loud noise made me drop the device, shattering the screen. Startled, I searched for the source of the noise. The drive-thru window was open, but I hadn't seen or heard anyone. Annoyed and scared, I took off the headset and pretended to work in the kitchen, anxiously awaiting the end of the shift. I no longer cared about the drive-thru customers. That would be my last night there. The rest of the night passed without incident. I had never experienced anything so bizarre and terrifying. During high school, my friends and I had the habit of walking to the nearby McDonald's after the end of our classes. It was almost a tradition for us, often done throughout the week. Several of my friends lived nearby, making these gatherings even more convenient. When we weren't wandering the city streets, trying different fast food places or thrift stores, or playing basketball, we would often go to one of our homes to pass the time until his mother arrived. She sometimes tolerated our presence, but often asked us to leave when she got home from work. It was understandable, as the house was small, and the constant presence of a group of noisy teenagers after a tiring day of work could be exhausting. Although we weren't troublemakers, it was common for us to smoke marijuana and such. Today, completely sober, I regret starting so early. I avoid substances like alcohol and drugs. I have nothing against them, but they're simply not for me. Looking back, I wish we had taken our mental and physical health more seriously, without constantly being under the influence of substances. Don't get me wrong, I'm in a great phase of my life now, but I acknowledge that it would have been better without these experiences. While marijuana isn't the worst thing in the world, it has its consequences, especially for young people who use it regularly. I remember one day in particular, which started like any other. It was me and my friends Preston, Tyler, Joshua, Ethan, and myself, Connor, leaving school, which ended at 2:19 p.m. On that day, we chose to go to McDonald's instead of the park. I rarely had money, but that day, luckily, I did, so I bought an M&M McFlurry, my favorite. McDonald's was unusually empty, with only one other customer besides us, who soon left us alone. We took the opportunity to be loud and a bit unruly, as we were all under the influence of marijuana. However, our fun was interrupted when a man with long brown hair and an old, intimidating appearance approached. He introduced himself as Billy, and for some reason, Preston started laughing hysterically, triggering laughter from all of us. The man's appearance, which resembled a stereotypical hillbilly, hilariously matched his name. However, the situation became tense when Billy fixed a threatening gaze on Preston. I sensed Preston's nervousness, even without looking directly at him. Billy seemed to struggle to contain his anger. We had no intention of mocking him, but I understood why he was upset. Suddenly, the relaxed atmosphere disappeared. Although we were marijuana users, we were not the aggressive type. We all played sports and had a calmer demeanor. Billy, who claimed to work at McDonald's, threatened to kick us out. We apologized, and eventually he walked away. We found it strange that he said he worked there because he wasn't wearing a uniform, and his behavior was atypical for an employee. After discussing the incident, we decided to leave. Later, I told my parents about it, and my mother called McDonald's. We found out that Billy had been fired years ago for aggressive behavior and that he continued to harass customers. Fortunately, we didn't provoke Billy to the point where he would attack us. We learned that he had been previously arrested and deemed mentally unfit, spending time in a psychiatric institution. Despite repeated calls to the police, he kept returning to McDonald's until he was arrested again for trespassing. This experience, while not the scariest, was memorable and real. I'm grateful that nothing more serious happened and we never saw him again. Since then, we've avoided that McDonald's, preferring other places like Taco Bell or Subway. The situation with Billy was complicated, considering his mental health. While I have empathy for him, it's essential to keep the streets safe for everyone. It's a reminder that we should be vigilant and careful, as we never know who we might encounter. I used to work at the drive-thru window at a McDonald's near my home. I hated the job, and even though it was relatively easy and straightforward, I couldn't get past how little I was getting paid for all the tasks I had. When I started, I was earning $9 an hour, and after 2 years, I was promoted to manager, and my salary increased to $13 an hour, which was a reasonable raise. Still, the amount of responsibility added to justify that increase simply wasn't worth it for me. And that was partially why I ended up quitting the job. But the incident I'm about to recount was the last straw for me and the reason I bid farewell to that place. I quickly want to say that a job is a job, and I respect anyone who works with what they have and steps up to do what they need to survive. I certainly won't judge anyone for working at McDonald's, but it simply wasn't worth my time and energy anymore, especially considering I landed a much better job that I'm genuinely excited to go to every morning when I wake up. Our McDonald's was a 24-hour location at the time, and this was before COVID. There was a guy who would go through the drive-thru practically every night around the same time, and he always flirted with me. He called me pretty and asked for my number, a pretty traditional move. No matter how many times I told him I wasn't interested, he persisted. I have to give it to him, though. As uncomfortable as he made me, his persistence was insane, unlike anything I had ever seen in my life. I mean, he did this every day for months. Eventually, on one particular day, I was having a particularly bad work week and an awful night on top of it, so I kind of exploded on him when he invited me for the millionth time. "You're annoying, get lost, and don't come back, or I'll accuse you of trespassing and you'll be arrested for harassment." I handed him his food and gave a malicious grin. I thought he would understand after that, but I should have known better, given how persistent he was, that he was a walking red flag and most likely insane. I kind of had an instant regret moment because I don't like acting that way, and I normally wouldn't. I know it's not appropriate for a lady to yell, so I was embarrassed. I try to be composed and unemotional when not needed, but something took over me that night, and I couldn't control myself anymore. The guy drove away, and I thought that would be the end of it. Unfortunately, that was far from the end because within minutes, he was right in front of me. I mean literally. He came in and even got into the kitchen area where I was. Keep in mind it was 11 p.m., and there were only 2 other employees there. One of them was a nerdy guy who couldn't protect me at all. He was skinny and had a fragile physique, not a bad bone in his body. He was a very nervous young man. And lastly, the other person there was a young girl. I forgot her name, but it's not relevant. She was only 16 and shouldn't have been there in the first place. The general manager made her stay late to help because we had so few employees. Obviously, she wasn't much help to me either. They were probably just as scared as I was, if not more. The restaurant part of the McDonald's where I worked closed at 8 p.m., so whoever left last didn't lock the door as they should have at 8 p.m. The door was unlocked now, and my heart sank in my chest. He threatened me and said he was armed. He hadn't pulled out the weapon yet, but said that if any of us tried to call the police, he would use it against us. I tried my best to calm the situation and make him calm down, but it took about 15 minutes to finally convince him to leave. Fortunately, no one got hurt. Finally, he left after a long 15 minutes when I convinced him that I wouldn't call the police when he left, and he finally ran away. I locked the door immediately, but not before yelling at him and calling him an idiot for acting that way. I don't know why or what made me do it. I just had this built-up anger, and it came out of me almost involuntarily. I had to escalate the situation even more by yelling at him, and by doing that, I made everything 10 times worse. That's why you'll never have a girlfriend, you weirdo and creep. I yelled. He immediately turned around and started running back towards the restaurant. Of course, I locked the door and ran to the back. This McDonald's was connected to a gas station, and in the back, there was a door that opened into either the McDonald's or the Marathon gas station. Normally, the door was unlocked because the owner of the McDonald's also owned the gas station. And since our store didn't have a restroom, all the employees had to use the gas station's restroom when needed. We all ran back there and tried to hide and call the police. Apparently, they had hired a new employee for the night shift at the store next door, and he was a big, masculine-looking man. So luckily, for our sake, he took control from there. He helped us hide in the back and put the store on lockdown. We managed to escape through a secret door in the corner of the store, and I managed to run and get into my car, speeding away despite everyone telling me not to do that. I just felt like I had to get out of there. Fortunately, my car was in the back corner of the parking lot, the complete opposite of where the guy was. Everyone else stayed, and eventually, the intruder fled too. The guy's name was Gregory, something like that. I don't remember his last name, but there was a warrant out for his arrest, and he was eventually captured a few months later. I never went back to that McDonald's again. Once, while working at McDonald's, I had the displeasure of dealing with a regular customer who became the source of my nightmares. This man, in his mid-30s, was notably stocky and used to visit the establishment regularly. However, it wasn't his frequency that disturbed me, but rather how he affected me. Every time he walked in, something about him felt off. His order was always simple, but his eyes, those eyes, were intense and piercing. I could feel his gaze on me as I worked behind the counter, leaving me uncomfortable and with a constant feeling of being watched. One day, something changed drastically. I was at home preparing dinner when a shiver ran down my spine. A sinister presence filled the air, and I knew something was wrong. Reluctantly, I looked out the window and was instantly overwhelmed by terror. Across the street, in complete darkness, stood the same man from McDonald's. He was standing there, illuminated only by the faint light of a distant street lamp, and his face displayed a macabre smile that sent shivers down my spine. The sight was disturbing, and my heart raced. In a panic, I closed the curtains tightly and grabbed my phone, dialing the police's number with trembling hands. I explained the situation and begged for help. While waiting desperately, I couldn't help but glance at the window, fearing that he might try something. When the police sirens finally sounded, I could hardly contain my relief. The officers arrived quickly, but to my surprise and horror, the man had disappeared like a ghost, leaving behind only the memory of his sinister smile. The police conducted a search of the area but found no traces of the intruder. They assured me that they would patrol the area throughout the night, but it brought me no comfort. Since that day, I never saw that man at McDonald's or anywhere else. However, the feeling of being watched continued to haunt my days and disturb my nights. Often, I would wake up in the middle of the night with the certainty that someone was watching me in the dark, waiting to do something terrible. To this day, I don't know what happened to that man or why he chose me as the target of his sick obsession. The fear and terror he caused me remain vivid in my mind, a constant reminder that evil may be closer than we imagine. The work environment had always been very pleasant, and I really enjoyed working at McDonald's. However, there was a single problem that plagued all of us. The restaurant where I worked seemed to be haunted. It wasn't something that only I had noticed. Any employee or regular customer could confirm that they had witnessed or heard something strange in the restaurant at least once. What was most striking was that these paranormal events weren't limited to nighttime. They occurred during the day as well. Items moved on their own, things inexplicably fell and changed places, and loud screams echoed through the restaurant, especially near the restroom. However, when we went to check, there was no one there, just silence. One of the strangest stories I witnessed involved a figure that only children could see. They complained that there was a person looking at them from one corner of the restaurant. What made it disturbing was that the man had no legs and floated above a pool of fresh blood, staring fixedly at the children without moving. Obviously, there was no one physically present at the location, and only the children were able to perceive the presence of this frightening being. Most astonishing of all was that there was an urban legend related to the location where the McDonald's was situated. It was said that before the construction of the store, that place had been an execution square, where several people had been sentenced to death and executed. Some claimed that the bodies of some of them were buried in the ground beneath the establishment. Rumors told of violent turf wars that took place in 2002 when a gang came to settle a score with an individual right at the restaurant's entrance. The stories were dark and mysterious, and many believed that these past events explain the strange and paranormal occurrences in that place. Who knows, perhaps the poor legless man was still there, his spirit trapped somewhere beneath the McDonald's, appearing only to frighten children. All this eerie atmosphere and unexplainable events led me to make the decision to leave my job there. The fear and mystery were simply too much to handle, and I no longer wanted to be a part of that supernatural nightmare. As we move away from the shadows and secrets of this unforgettable night, remember that every story, even the scariest ones, has an end. The lights of McDonald's turn on again, bringing back normality, but the memories of what we've experienced here will stay with us. It's always a pleasure to be here with you, sharing moments that challenge our courage and ignite our curiosity. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your mind alert, because you never know where or when the next mystery will reveal itself. And if you enjoyed embarking on this frightening journey with me, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and activate the notification bell. This helps us to continue bringing more mysteries and adventures for you. Share this video with your friends and leave a comment telling us what scared you the most or what you would like to explore in our upcoming encounters.